Hey YouTube, in this video I want to be talking about why I believe sprinters should lace up the gloves and box. There's a couple of reasons why I would recommend a sprinter boxing in their spare time other than just the fact that Usain Bolt used to do it. If we were actually to talk about some of the reasons why Usain Bolt probably did box and things that I've noticed that are true, that have actually verified, that have actually helped me in my sprinting, which is why I believe sprinters would box, excluding what Usain Bolt did, because the reason I started boxing was more for building an aerobic base without actually doing anything that isn't sprinting with my legs, in a sense, or just being aerobic whilst trying to build an aerobic base. Because as sprinters, it's worth noting that anything that isn't sprinting, that involves you moving with your legs, so this is basically every single way you could move through anywhere other than doing a handstand, essentially, is slightly detrimental to your sprinting form. So I decided to pick up boxing because when you're boxing, your legs are stationary most of the time, and when they aren't stationary, they're moving really quickly. Obviously not in a sprinting motion, but you are on your toes and you are having to just stay balanced and move around quite quickly when you're moving. So it's quite useful there that because I'm mostly just in a stance and I'm not really walking around or any of that, which you do sometimes. It was fine, so I picked it up. And I've learned a couple of things whilst I've been doing boxing, and they've quickly come to show whilst I've been training. And there is 6 key reasons why I believe a sprinter should box. So first of all, the most important one would be relaxation. As a sprinter, you should already know that once you get out of your dry phase, after about maybe 10-20 meters, you're going to hit top speed, and at that point you are not going to be putting any force into the ground intentionally, because if you try to put force in the ground intentionally, you're going to be using your muscles. You want to use your tendons, and the best way the tendons fire is by being relaxed. So you can't be tensing your muscles if you really want your tendons to fire at their peak. And boxing is great for teaching you how to do that, because when you're throwing a punch in boxing, you're taught not to just tense up all your arms at all times and just throw with absolute force. You're supposed to just stay relaxed and tense. Like, look at my hand. This is how my hand is most of the time. You can put a finger through. You're supposed to keep your hand relaxed, and then as you punch, last second before you make impact, you squeeze. That way you're able to move faster and you're able to put more force into your punches, because not only are you putting your entire body weight into the punch if you're doing it properly, but you're able to move your fist faster, and that's just how you do power. It's like literally to generate more force, it's mass times acceleration, an important formula not just for boxing but for sprinting too. And I've actually have a video of me punching to show the difference. So let's start off with this is like 4 months ago, I believe. Let's start off with how I was boxing 4 months ago with my fist speed. I was able to throw 5 punches in 2 seconds. Here it is. Now let's compare those 5 punches to me now. Literally yesterday, I did this yesterday. I was sparring against someone and I was able to throw 6 punches in about 1.5 seconds. 6, extremely fast. Here it is. It might be worthwhile going back a bit, because the first 2 punches are so fast, and I might have cut the video at the wrong period when I was clipping it out. The first 2 punches are so fast that you don't really see them. You only hear the sound, and you might not even hear the sound if you don't focus on the thuds. The reason why that was important is because if you just look at the numbers, I was able to decrease the time I spent throwing punches from 2 seconds to 1.5, and whilst also decreasing the time, I was able to increase the amount of punches by 1, which would literally be able to show you how more relaxed I was when I was punching. In fact, if you was to even go back, you'd be able to see that when I was doing the first 5 punches, I was really tense and there was like a massive wind up. If the person I was fighting was more skilled in boxing, then I wouldn't have been able to throw most of those punches. I might have been able to throw the jab because it was close enough, but maybe one other punch. but the rest of them they probably would have missed. For example, if the me from back then was to fight the me now, not only would he probably not get a chance to punch, if he did punch, he wouldn't be able to hit me. Compare that to what I just did with 6 punches in 1.5 seconds. The punches were just so much faster, and that instantly correlates to sprinting, because if the punches are faster, I'm being more relaxed because I'm able to make the move faster, which means now that I've had time to train with my fists how to move them faster, I'm able to also have time to train with sprinting with my legs, but not just my legs, but with my hands. So the important thing about relaxation training for sprinters is that when you're doing it, you're sprinting and you need rest. You need to rest for like a decent amount of time. You need like something like 30 minutes to fully recover, so you don't accidentally end up working your aerobic base. If you're doing sub-maximal training, that's fine. But the thing is, when you're sprinting, even if you're sprinting sub-maximally, it's so taxing on the body and it's so easy to get tired. So you can't really do that much training often, so you can't really work on your form much. But your brain will still treat you moving your fists, as long as you're doing it in the same format you do with your legs, as relaxation training. And you can do this for hours on end without stopping, just repeatedly, so your body's able to quickly understand, oh, tense last second, tense last second, tense last second. And this leads me on to my second point, which is fast hands make fast feet and fast feet make fast hands. That's like boxing 101. And it's not just on boxing, this is with sprinting as well. If you can move your arms faster in full range of motion, your legs will do the exact same thing, because your legs and your arms are gonna have to sync up to be able to move that quickly. Notice I say full range of motion. I don't mean just do little movements like this to try and make your legs move up, because that will just shorten your stride length extremely, really quickly. Like if you try to do that, which I wouldn't recommend doing, you'll really quickly realize that you're not really traveling far. I mean, your arms are moving fast, but you're not really traveling far, because you need to get full range of motion. If you're not getting full range of motion, you won't be able to pull it off. But whilst you're boxing, because you're training relaxation, you're able to increase the speed of your hands, and once you're increasing the speed of your hands, increasing the speed of your legs. And now that you're increasing the speed of your legs, you can now move your arms faster, and then it's literally just a loop that will continue. As long as you can keep this loop continuing, you don't cut somewhere, you're just going to keep getting faster. Unofficially, before I started boxing, my sprint time was 12.2. Now, after boxing for about 3 months, I was able to get my time down to 11.69. And after I just came back from university and I just trained at home, within those, I didn't train on the first 2 weeks, I think. So within 2 weeks afterwards, because that's how long my holiday was, 4 weeks in total, I was able to bring my time down from 11.69 to 11.33. Obviously unofficial. However, the fact that I was able to cut that much time is a bit shocking, because at first it's kind of hard to know how I did it, but then after a while you realize, okay, it's mainly because my arms were moving so fast in full range of motion that my legs were able to follow. Where was I learning how to move my arms fast? From boxing. Because when you're sprinting, your arms might accidentally tense up, and just like with boxing, you want your arms to tense literally like a fraction of a second, and only that time. After that, it relaxes, and that's usually when you're pulling it down, not straight pulling it down, but when it's about to straighten out completely, you want to tense for that millisecond, because that's when your foot is going to be on the ground, and then from there you relax and you just shoot your arm back as fast as possible. Now the next thing that's important for sprinting that you get from boxing would be reaction training. Now we're going to see more videos of me, this time not punching but being punched. So first of all, reaction training is obviously quite important, because you need to be able to react at 2 times when you're sprinting. The first time is when you hit the gun. The second you hit the gun, you need to know to move out of the blocks, and you want to do that as fast as possible. You don't want to spend time waiting for your brain to be ready to move you out, because it's a 3-step process, a 3-step psychological process that goes into trying to react to anything. I forgot the exact terms, but there's 3 steps to this process, and your brain has to follow these every single time it reacts to something. There's a couple of times where obviously your body can unconsciously react to something. Like, for example, if I was to get stabbed, I'd move my hand away quickly. If I was to get burned, I'd move my hand away quickly. Your body's already adapted to do that over millennia, through evolution, but your body hasn't adapted to do that for a gunshot going off, so you know to sprint away from the gun, or slightly away from the gun, because it's usually off to the side. But you get the point. Your body's not used to that, and after a while, it's really easy for your body to just, whilst you're training for it in the blocks, to just stop reacting and get tired. And for various reasons, because after a while, your body's going to realize, okay, this gun doesn't really mean much. It's not going to kill me, but you want your body to be basically scared of the gun to run away. And that's a problem, because it's not scared of the gun, so it's not going to run away. But with boxing, you're able to react to the punches. And obviously, who wants to get punched in the face? No one. So you're going to want to, so essentially every single time you're getting punched, you're going to have to react as fast as possible to each of the punches to make sure you don't get punched. If you don't react, you're going to get punched. It's as simple as that. And the more you box, you're going to realize that your reaction time is going to go down slightly, bit by bit. You might not be able to really check it, but if you was to box, you'd be able to see through your footage, your own footage. So I'll show you examples. So the first time I boxed, the very first person I boxed, 13 seconds in, he jabbed me and I wasn't able to see it. This is how it looked. And after a while of training, literally again, yesterday, I fought someone as well. I fought a couple of people, and I was able to react to the punch. Not just react to the punch and dodge, but actually counteract. Because when it comes to boxing, I'm an out fighter, and I'm the type of person who doesn't really run in and punch you, though I do it sometimes. And may you just counter your punches. If you're going to punch me, I'm going to counter it. I have a couple of footage of me just doing counters, because those are quite difficult to do, but I'm not going to show those. I'm literally just, I mean, this is a counter though, but this isn't the one where it's like a fast jab, because it's kind of hard to tell whether I get punched or not unless you listen to the sounds. So I'll just show you one that's much easier to see, which is he punches me, I think it was a jab, and I go for his body and I punch him. Here it is. Again, you might want to go back because it's quite hard to see the punch, because I probably cut at the wrong point again. Whether you're able to quickly tell that, yeah, I saw the punch, I moved out of the way to punch, and I hit him as well. I know I said for reaction training, obviously the blocks are when you're going to want to need it. And there's a second point where it's important, which I'm about to get into, because I just really want to address how when you're boxing, your body's essentially in fight or flight, and you can't fly, so you're gonna fight, which means your body's actively releasing adrenaline and is prepared for all of these fights. Each of these rounds could be anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes. And if you're doing multiple rounds, your body's gonna have to react to hundreds of punches in under an hour, depending on how long you're doing this for. But at the end of the day, you're gonna be reacting to at least 100 punches, and the more you dodge, the better. When I first started out boxing, I was getting hit a lot. But after a while, really quickly actually, I started getting hit less, other than when people were moving my guard out of the way and I was backing away from them. If this is happening and I'm training so often, because I was basically doing boxing basically every single day, maybe not sparring with everyone, but I was always training every single day, I was able to improve so fast. And since I'm just reacting each time, every single time, even if I'm not just going against an opponent, I'm shadow boxing against a punching bag, so I'm always trying to think and trying to make it as realistic as possible. My reaction time just slowly started to get lower and lower. And this is important just for the blocks, but for every single time you touch the ground, because when you're sprinting, the times you're touching the ground at, there's obviously going to be a tempo. However, it's worth noting that you're probably not going to know what this tempo is, and it's going to get from slow to fast. And you want to essentially plantar flex the second you get close to the ground. The second your foot almost straightens out, you want to be plantar flexing. And this tempo is going to go from slow to fast. And once it reaches that fast time, where the tempo is steady, your top speed, you're going to want to be plantar flexing every single time. And obviously at that point, it's a tempo, so you're going to be able to know when to plantar flex. But before this, the tempo is going to be getting faster, and there'll be times where you won't really be able to tell when you're supposed to plantar flex, but you'll be able to feel your body's reactions to know when. If you're able to kind of predict when it's going to occur, you're going to be able to plantar flex better, and this boxing training would be able to teach you how to do that. And the reason why plantar flexing is important is because if you don't plantar flex, your ground contact time will never and repeat after me, never go sub 0.1 seconds. And to really reach elite times, you need your ground contact time below 0.1. If it doesn't go below 0.1, you can kiss going sub 10 goodbye, because it's never going to happen. Which is why it's quite important that you get this timing right. If you can get that timing right through boxing, it's going to be lovely. Because like I said before, the body can't really tell what you're doing. It can tell where you're training, but it can't tell what you're trying to do. But if you're focusing on something, your body's naturally going to adapt. And if you're able to just do a lot of boxing, which again isn't really too fatiguing, or mentally or physically, don't mentally, different kind of story, but in a different way, but that's a story for a different day, you're going to be able to improve on a track. The next reason why boxing is important is because of balance. Balance is very, very important in boxing. If you have no balance, you're going to fall over. And it's the same thing with sprinting. If you have no balance, I mean, as sprinters, I don't really need to talk about what would happen if you had no balance. You're going to stumble out of the blocks, or you're just going to trip when you're sprinting. Trust, maybe it might not happen for 100 or 200 meters, but if you're doing 400 meters, I can't tell you how many times lactic acid has filled me up, and I've almost tripped like maybe 40 meters from the finish line. I mean, I can't really tell, because in 400, the final 100 is just hell, and I just want to get to the other end, so I'm not really looking at how far I've gotten. I just know, okay, this is about halfway and this is the finish line. But if you don't really have much balance, you're going to struggle to sprint, purely because you're going to wobble every single time you take a step. If you're producing a crazy amount of force, not so big of a problem. However, to produce a crazy amount of force, you need balance. So you can't just aim to produce a crazy amount of force and not have to worry about balance, because balance is very important, because essentially every single time you take a step, you're using your arms to counteract your legs. And if you're not able to sync this up correctly, you're going to fall over. And when you're boxing, it's the same thing. If you go back to the very first one I did, for me punching the 5 times in 2 seconds, you can literally see that I fell over on the very last punch. Reason being, I wasn't really listening to my sense of gravity to know that I needed to shuffle forwards before I threw that punch, instead of just throwing that punch. And things like this will help you control your body better, so you're able to actually sprint. Because there's so many different ways people say you can work on your balance, and to be honest, if you're not working your balance in either an extremely reactive situation where you need to move fast, like with boxing, or unilaterally with one leg, all the balance training is pointless. So getting on that half ball thing where you just squat down in the wobbles, if you're doing that with both legs, you're wasting your time. If you do it with one leg, however, different story, that is worth your time. However, that can only really get you so far, to be honest. You need to, because you're doing it in a slow motion, because if you just tried to do that really quickly, you'd obviously fall over. But with boxing, you're able to do it quite reactively, quite quickly, quite similar to how you was in sprinting. And I've said it before already, if you want to be a good sprinter, your training needs to simulate sprinting, meaning you need to be doing everything as fast as possible. The weight doesn't really matter much. What's important is doing everything with good form as fast as possible. If you can pull that off, you're going to be dandy. The next reason why boxing training is important is because of pacing. When you're boxing, you need to, I mean, I'm no elite and I've never tried to be, so I haven't done any 10 rounds, for example, ever. But when you're in a single round, one round at all, it could be anywhere between 2 minutes and 3 minutes. Now that I've thought about it, I'm going to show you a video of me at the end of a 3-minute round with my arm dead, and I'm going to show it right now. In that video, I was lucky that the 3-minute round actually ended right when my arm died. However, there was another 3-minute round that we did on that very day. I think it was after this, where my arm was just dead and for a minute, and I had to just try it with my arm down, completely just sagging, try to dodge all the punches, and I would kind of move like Floyd Mayweather. But that's why pacing is important, because if you don't pace properly, what's going to end up happening is you're just going to die whilst you're boxing. And for 100 and 200 meters, 200 meters a bit, but especially 100, pacing isn't really too important in the way of like how long am I like producing a lot of force. It's more of how do I get to the force. So it does kind of make pacing important, because for 100 meters, it's more about getting to your top speed as slow as possible, as long as your top speed is high enough, so you're able to decelerate as slow as possible. If you do that, you're gonna have a much faster time, because don't just think I can produce more force, so I'm going to be able to sprint faster. Yes, that's true. But if you don't pace properly, what's going to end up happening is your time's going to improve, if it does at all. But it's not going to improve to the peak you could have ran at if you don't do that. Other than the 60 meters where it doesn't really matter. If you're trying to run 100 meters, you're gonna run a faster time, but you're not gonna run the fastest time. And this is especially true in 200 and 400. 200 slightly less, purely because you already know in a 200-meter race that you're supposed to just survive the curve, and then once you've gotten around the curve, get the top speed. But in a 400-meter, pacing is extremely important, and everything I just listed is quite important for 400 meters, because you need to stay relaxed and react to the ground as quickly as possible with each and every step you take, because you've got so many. And if you react tense at any point in the race, you're just going to build up lactic acid quite faster than you need to, and it's going to just really demolish you, which is why when you get to the end of the race, you might fall over, like various different things. You might fall over, your legs might not be working, you might not be able to sit down. Once you sit down, you might not be able to stand up. There's so many different pains that could happen whilst you're sprinting the 400 meters. Not so much for 200, but pacing is still important for 2 and 100 as well. So being able to know when to just stay relaxed and just go with the flow, in this case for sprinting it would be floating whilst you're boxing, is really important if you want to make sure that you don't die by the end of it. Whilst you're boxing, you're able to quickly learn how to do that. Now, the main reason why I picked boxing up, before I even found out about any of these benefits that I had to figure out whilst I was boxing, was that it's a great way to train your aerobic base, purely because you're just moving your arms and you don't have to move your legs too much. I mean, you are moving your legs, but they're mostly stationary, and I don't want to have to jog and potentially ruin my sprint form, which, to be honest, in my opinion, isn't really that good anyway, whilst doing like sub-maximal repeats of hundreds, or maybe a 2K run, for example, throughout my off season, along with hill sprints, when I could just be doing hill sprints and boxing, which don't damage my form. One of them makes my form even better, and the other one doesn't really do anything to my form. It just helped me build my base so that I'm ready for when I go into the season, for when I actually have to train, so I'm able to recover faster, and I'm able to do my sprints for 400 without getting tired, and just let it mainly be for lactic acid, where my form breaks down over time. And if you do that, you're going to be able to get faster, especially in your off season. Boxing in your off season is really important just for that, because that's when you usually build your aerobic base. And I made slight comments in some of my videos about how you should really be going from short distance to long distance. Whether a way to do both at the same time would be, whilst you're sprinting, do short distance to long distance training throughout the entire season. So off season, you're just doing short distance work until you get into your season where you're doing your distance is slightly longer than it. But in your off season as well, you still do boxing training, so you can kind of simulate it as if you was doing longer distance sprints, like 300 repeats, 400 repeats. You get the point, which is why boxing is important. And those are the 6 reasons why I think sprinters should box if you want to improve your performance over an entire season. If you like the video, let me know. If you have any doubts, questions, queries about what I just said, put those in the comment section. I'll read all your comments. So if you have any video suggestions that you want me to do, put those there too. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, most of the time, I put something in the description that I forgot to put in this video, so it's worth checking that out to see if there's anything there that I haven't said that would actually be quite useful for you to improve whilst you're sprinting. If you like my content, make sure you subscribe. I post every 2 days at 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. If that's not the time where that's not the time that you use, then make sure you convert it to your own time, so you're able to actually be ready for when my videos get released, and put the bell on just in case, because if you don't want to do all that work, the bell's lovely. And yeah, that's me.